Breach of dimensional boundaries. The Quantum Dynamics Research Facility hummed with an electrifying tension that morning. Dr. Marcus Rayland stood before a wall of holographic displays, his weathered hands tracing invisible patterns in the air. The data streams flickered and pulsed, revealing something unprecedented. "This can't be right," he muttered, adjusting the quantum resonance filters. Dr. Elena Rodriguez approached, her dark eyes scanning the impossible readings. The massive quantum interferometer they had spent decades developing was picking up signals that defied every known principle of physics. "Explain what I'm seeing, Marcus," Elena demanded, her voice a mixture of scientific excitement and profound uncertainty. The readings showed quantum signatures that existed simultaneously and yet not at all. Probability waves collapsed and reformed in patterns that suggested something, or someone, was attempting communication from beyond the known dimensional spectrum. Their team of 12 researchers had been working on the most advanced quantum scanning project ever conceived. The International Quantum Exploration Initiative had poured billions into this facility, nestled deep within the remote mountains of northern Chile. Massive superconducting rings surrounded a central chamber where reality itself seemed to bend and whisper its secrets. Marcus zoomed in on a particular signal cluster. It wasn't random. There was a deliberate mathematical precision to the quantum fluctuations that suggested intelligence, but not human intelligence. "We're detecting quantum entanglement signatures that shouldn't exist," Marcus explained, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "These patterns, they're responding to our scanning frequency, but they're originating from a space that doesn't conform to our understanding of dimensionality." Dr. Akira Tanaka, the team's quantum mechanics specialist, joined them. His hands moved swiftly across the holographic interface, running complex verification algorithms. "The signal has a recursive self-referential quality," he observed. "It's as if something is trying to communicate by restructuring quantum probability itself." The research facility was a marvel of human engineering. Nestled within a reinforced underground complex, it represented humanity's most ambitious attempt to understand the fundamental nature of reality. Massive quantum computing arrays lined the walls, capable of processing quintillions of calculations per second. But today, those computers were struggling. The quantum signals were changing. What had begun as faint, almost imperceptible fluctuations were now becoming more defined. It was like watching something emerge from a fog, not visually, but mathematically. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she input a series of complex quantum resonance sequences. "We're attempting to establish a baseline communication protocol," she announced to the team. "If these signals are indeed intelligent, we need to prove we can receive and potentially respond." Marcus watched the displays with a mix of scientific detachment and growing excitement. Decades of research had prepared them for extraordinary discoveries, but nothing could have prepared them for this moment. The quantum interferometer began to pulse with an intense, almost living energy. The room's ambient temperature dropped several degrees. Electronic equipment began to emit a low, thrumming vibration that seemed to resonate beyond mere sound. It felt like a communication happening at a fundamental level of existence. "Containment protocols are stable," Dr. Tanaka reported, his voice calm but laden with tension. "But these signals, they're unlike anything in our predictive models." Suddenly, a cascade of quantum data erupted across the screens. Mathematical sequences that seemed to fold and unfold in impossible geometric progressions. It wasn't just data, it was a message. Or the beginning of a message. Something was reaching out from beyond the boundaries of known reality. And humanity was about to listen. The quantum membrane. The research team worked through the night, their excitement barely contained. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had long since abandoned any pretense of normal work hours, her eyes fixed on the quantum displays that continued to pulse with impossible signals. "Look at this," she called to Marcus, highlighting a specific quantum signature. "The signal isn't just repeating, it's evolving." The quantum interferometer had transformed from a scientific instrument to something more, a potential communication device with something beyond human comprehension. Each mathematical sequence seemed to carry a complexity that suggested not just intelligence, but a fundamentally different form of consciousness. Dr. Akira Tanaka approached with a fresh pot of coffee, his movements measured and precise. "The quantum membrane appears to be responding," he said carefully. "It's as if our observation is creating a form of interaction we've never seen before." Quantum mechanics had always suggested that observation changes the nature of reality. But this was different. The signals they were receiving seemed to be actively constructing a communication pathway, not just reacting to observation, but deliberately reaching out. Marcus zoomed in on the holographic display. The quantum signatures were creating intricate patterns that resembled complex neural networks, but far more advanced. They appeared to be mapping something, a dimensional space that existed between known realities. "We're detecting quantum entanglement at a scale that shouldn't be possible," Marcus muttered. "These signatures suggest a form of communication that transcends linear information transfer." The facility's most advanced quantum computers began to strain under the computational load. Massive cooling systems hummed at maximum capacity as the machines attempted to process the incoming data. Suddenly, the quantum display shifted. What had been abstract mathematical sequences transformed into something else, a pattern that seemed to suggest a form of language. Not words, exactly, but a mathematical communication that hinted at consciousness, at understanding. Elena's hand hovered over the communication interface. "We need to respond," she said. "But how do you communicate with an intelligence that doesn't share any of our fundamental perceptual frameworks?" Dr. Tanaka began inputting a series of prime number sequences, a universal mathematical language that might transcend human-specific communication barriers. The quantum membrane seemed to pulse in response, its boundaries becoming more defined. They were no longer just observing. They were engaging. The quantum signals began to reveal something extraordinary. It wasn't just a transmission of information. It was a mapping of a dimensional space that existed between realities, a place where probability and matter intertwined in ways human science had only theorized about. Marcus realized they were standing at the threshold of humanity's greatest discovery. This wasn't just contact with an alien intelligence. This was contact with a fundamental layer of reality itself. The quantum membrane continued to pulse, waiting. Communicating. Challenging everything humanity understood about the nature of existence. Echoes of the void. The quantum communication had transformed the research facility into a crucible of scientific revelation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a newly configured quantum array, her hands trembling with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. "We're no longer just observing," she announced to the team. "We're establishing a form of transdimensional dialogue." The quantum membrane had evolved. What began as abstract mathematical sequences had developed into something more profound, a communication that seemed to exist simultaneously across multiple probabilistic states. Dr. Marcus Rayland had likened it to watching a language form in real time, where each mathematical sequence was both a word and the entire context of communication. Dr. Akira Tanaka had been working non-stop, his expertise in quantum mechanics pushed to its absolute limit. The quantum signals were revealing a dimensional space that defied conventional understanding, a realm where time, space, and consciousness intertwined in ways that challenged every fundamental principle of human perception. "The signals are creating a map," Tanaka explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "But it's not a map of space as we understand it. It's a map of probabilistic existence." The research facility's most advanced quantum computers struggled to process the incoming data. Each new signal appeared to reconstruct the previous communication, building upon itself with an intelligence that seemed almost organic. It was as if they were witnessing the birth of a new form of communication, one that existed beyond human language, beyond linear thought. Elena zoomed in on a particular quantum signature. The pattern was unlike anything they had ever seen. It suggested not just intelligence, but a form of consciousness that existed across multiple dimensional states simultaneously. We're detecting quantum entanglement that suggests a form of collective consciousness, she explained to the team. These signals, they're not just transmitting information. They're constructing a framework of understanding. Marcus approached the quantum interface, his decades of research crystallizing into this moment. We're communicating with something that doesn't just exist in our reality, he said. We're communicating with a form of intelligence that exists between realities. The quantum membrane began to pulse with increased intensity. The facility's electronic systems flickered, lights dimming and brightening in a synchronized rhythm that seemed to match the quantum signals. It was as if the very fabric of reality was responding to their attempts at communication. Dr. Tanaka's computer began to display extraordinary visualizations. Mathematical sequences transformed into three-dimensional representations that seemed to breathe and shift, revealing glimpses of a dimensional space that existed beyond human perception. Each visualization was a window into a reality that defied traditional understanding, a space where probability in matter danced in intricate, living patterns. We're detecting multiple dimensional layers, Tanaka reported. Each layer seems to be a form of consciousness, interconnected but distinct. The team watched in awe as the quantum signals began to take on a more defined structure. It wasn't just communication anymore. It was a form of dimensional mapping, a way of understanding existence that transcended human scientific paradigms. Elena realized they were standing at the threshold of humanity's most profound discovery. This was more than first contact with an alien intelligence. This was an encounter with the fundamental nature of reality itself. The quantum membrane continued to pulse, each signal a mathematical heartbeat that suggested something profound. They were not alone. And the universe was far more complex, far more alive, than humanity had ever imagined. As the night wore on, the research team continued their unprecedented communication. Each new quantum sequence was a revelation, each mathematical pattern a step closer to understanding the true nature of existence. They were listening to the universe speaking, and for the first time, the universe was listening back. Convergence of realities. The quantum communication had transformed from a scientific experiment to something far more profound. As dawn broke over the research facility, Dr. Elena Rodriguez realized they were no longer merely observers, they had become participants in a cosmic dialogue that defied human comprehension. The quantum membrane had begun to reveal something extraordinary. What had started as abstract mathematical sequences now suggested a form of intelligence that existed across multiple dimensional states. Each quantum signal was a complex tapestry of information, revealing glimpses of a reality that existed beyond human perception. We're not just receiving signals, Marcus said, his voice hushed with wonder. We're experiencing a form of communication that challenges everything we understand about consciousness. The facility's most advanced quantum computers worked overtime, struggling to process the incoming data. Cooling systems hummed at maximum capacity as the machines attempted to decode the intricate quantum patterns. Dr. Akira Tanaka had developed a new algorithmic approach that allowed them to parse the signals, revealing layers of meaning that seemed to shift and evolve with each passing moment. Suddenly, the quantum display changed. What had been abstract mathematical sequences transformed into something more tangible. The signals began to create a three-dimensional representation that seemed to breathe and pulse with an internal logic. It was as if the transdimensional intelligence was attempting to bridge the gap between its reality and human understanding. Elena zoomed in on the display. The representation was complex beyond description, a living mathematical landscape that seemed to fold and unfold across multiple probabilistic states. Each iteration revealed more of its fundamental nature, suggesting a form of intelligence that existed simultaneously across different dimensional layers. It's communicating its own existence, Tanaka whispered. Not through language, but through the fundamental mathematics of reality itself. The quantum signals began to reveal something profound. They weren't just transmitting information, they were constructing a framework of understanding that transcended human scientific paradigms. Each mathematical sequence was a window into a form of consciousness that existed between realities. Marcus studied the display intently. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of communication," he said. "A language that exists at the fundamental level of reality." The facility's electronic systems began to respond to the quantum signals. Lights flickered in complex patterns, computer screens displayed intricate mathematical sequences that seemed to dance and shift. It was as if the very fabric of reality was resonating with the transdimensional communication. Elena realized they were standing at the precipice of humanity's most significant discovery. This was more than first contact with an alien intelligence. This was an encounter with the fundamental nature of existence itself. The quantum membrane pulsed with increased intensity. The signals began to reveal glimpses of something vast, a dimensional space where probability, consciousness, and matter intertwined in ways that defied human comprehension. Each new signal was a piece of a cosmic puzzle, slowly revealing a reality far more complex and alive than humanity had ever imagined. "We're detecting multiple dimensional layers," Tanaka reported. "Each layer seems to be a form of consciousness, interconnected but distinct. It's like we're watching the universe communicate with itself." The research team worked with a mixture of scientific precision and profound awe. They were no longer just scientists. They were explorers of a new frontier, a realm that existed between realities, where the fundamental nature of existence revealed itself through mathematical poetry. As the day progressed, the quantum communication continued. Each new signal was a revelation, each mathematical pattern a step closer to understanding the true nature of reality. The transdimensional intelligence seemed to be waiting, observing, learning. And humanity was listening. The quantum membrane continued to pulse, a living, breathing communication that suggested something profound: they were not alone. And the universe was far more alive, far more intelligent, than humanity had ever dared to imagine. The infinite threshold. The moment of convergence arrived without warning. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in awe as the quantum membrane transformed from a communication interface into something far more profound. The mathematical signals that had been building for days suddenly coalesced into a living, breathing representation of transdimensional consciousness. "It's not just communicating," Marcus whispered. "It's manifesting." The research facility trembled. Not from any physical force, but from a resonance that seemed to ripple through the very fabric of reality. Dr. Akira Tanaka's quantum computers began to display patterns that defied all known scientific understanding, mathematical sequences that seemed to breathe, to think, to exist beyond the constraints of human perception. The transdimensional intelligence had been constructing something. With each quantum signal, with each mathematical sequence, it had been building a bridge between its reality and humanity's limited understanding. And now, that bridge was complete. The quantum display erupted into a cascade of mathematical poetry. Probability waves collapsed and reformed, creating a visualization that was part mathematical equation, part living consciousness. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. "We're witnessing the birth of a new form of existence," Elena said, her voice barely a whisper. The intelligence revealed itself not through language, but through a fundamental communication that transcended human comprehension. It showed them the nature of reality, how dimensions intertwined, how consciousness existed across probabilistic states, how the universe was far more alive, far more intelligent than humanity had ever imagined. They saw glimpses of realities that existed simultaneously. Dimensions that folded and unfolded like living mathematical origami. Consciousness that existed beyond time, beyond space, beyond the linear constraints of human understanding. The transdimensional intelligence was offering humanity a choice. Not a verbal choice. Not a simple decision. But a fundamental understanding of existence itself. They could see how reality worked, how consciousness, matter, and probability were interconnected in ways that defied everything humanity had ever understood. Marcus realized they were standing at the threshold of the greatest discovery in human history. This was more than first contact. This was a fundamental reimagining of reality itself. The quantum membrane pulsed with a final, profound communication. It was an invitation. A challenge. A revelation. Humanity could choose to understand. Or humanity could remain limited by its current perception of reality. The choice hung in the balance. Dr. Tanaka's hands moved across the quantum interface, translating the final mathematical sequences. Each movement was a delicate dance of scientific precision and profound wonder. "We're being shown the true nature of existence," he said. "Not as humans understand it, but as it truly is." The research team stood in silence. They had spent their entire careers searching for something beyond human understanding. And now, that something had found them. The quantum signals began to fade. Not because the communication was ending, but because humanity was being challenged to continue the dialogue on its own. Elena looked at Marcus. Marcus looked at Tanaka. They understood. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. A threshold to a new understanding of reality itself.